Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of College Hockey Talk. On today's podcast, I'm joined by senior from the Minnesota women's hockey team, Madeline Wethington. Madeline, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today, and how's everything going?
Good. Thanks so much for having me, Matthew. I really appreciate joining you.
No problem. Well, obviously, your team is entering the second half of the season as a top five team in the country. How would you evaluate your team's performance this season so far?
Yeah, we had a lot of high expectations entering the season with so many returning fifth years as well as Olympians coming in and coming back. So we knew that we had a really great team this year. And so the first half, we had our ups and downs like any team does. We had a few losses. And I think those losses like helped us figure out like how we want to play as a team and what we can improve on, which were great benchmarks. And I think it's important to have those bumps in the road, especially early on in the season, so you can learn from them and perform at your best in the second half.
Yeah, and obviously being a ranked team consistently, especially in the higher ranks, how do you manage to deal with the pressure of being one of those ranked teams, and how does your team maintain that consistency throughout the regular season? Because I feel like that's one of the biggest struggles that a lot of teams have is it's hard to maintain it consistent during the regular season. That's why teams fall out of the rankings sometimes.
Yeah, I think all of us coming to Minnesota, there's that expectation to be a top team. So going into your experience at Minnesota, you kind of have that in the back of your mind that you have to perform at a high level because that's what the players have done before. So, yeah, I wouldn't say we really focus on it very much at all. We don't tend to like look at the rankings very much or pairwise and such because those can become distractions. And we're just focused game by game because like a lot of people say like the WCHA is so competitive that no matter like if you're playing a top five team versus a bottom team in the WCHA, anyone can beat anyone on any given day. So it's important to just stay focused at the task at hand rather than looking at things that might necessarily not necessarily be necessarily out of your control. So yeah.
And what's it like playing in the WCHA this year? Just talk a little bit about the conference and just the competition you face, because, like you said, there's never a night off when you play in the WCHA.
Yeah, it's a pretty unique conference considering we have 3 to 4 teams usually in the top 5 to 7, which makes it really interesting each and every week because you have to perform at your best to be able to bring home the Julian By Cup, which is our regular season trophy. A lot of people say that that's honestly one of the hardest trophies to win in college hockey because you're in the best conference and it's a marathon trophy rather than a final sprint at the end with the national championship. And so what's so unique about the WCHA is you have those really like top end teams, but you also have teams that are like continuously improving and wanting to get better. In my span of 4 years, like our quote unquote bottom teams like St. Cloud Bemidji, Mankato, and now St. Thomas, like all those teams have the capabilities, and we've seen that already this year of beating top teams. And that just shows you that you can't take a night off.
Yeah, didn't St. Cloud beat you guys this year?
Yeah, they did beat us. They're a very good team. They have a lot of international players, as well as they're very well coached. They have the old North Dakota coach, so he's really great, Idalski. They're very disciplined. And we also we played on a Monday, and we just played against Duluth on Friday and Saturday. So we normally never play 3 games in 4 days, and play on a Monday for that matter with school, and it was just a very odd game, and we played at a high school rink too, so it just was the vibe wasn't always it wasn't there for us, but obviously it's not an excuse. And we then played them right before the break started, and we beat them 6-0, 9-0, and that was kind of like, all right, we're solidifying ourselves here and showcasing like that we can play at a much higher level than what we produced on that Monday night.
Why was that game on a Monday? Was there any like, was it just the way the schedule worked, or was it like an event going on in St. Cloud?
Yeah, it was the USA Hockey Hall of Fame game, so it wasn't even for WCHA standings or anything like that. It was just it would count towards the pairwise and such, but
Oh, okay.
yeah, so it was like it was kind of a community event, so it was at Andover Community Center. So the whole town of I felt like the whole town of Andover was there watching. But yeah.
It must have brought you back though to your high school hockey days a little bit.
Oh, for sure. It was really fun. There was a great crowd there. It felt almost like a section final type of game for sure.
Now, your team has got to play in Vegas this year. I thought that was kind of cool. How cool was it to go there, and what'd you take away from that experience playing Yale and Penn State?
Yeah, so our assistant coach actually set up the entire tournament. She was getting her master's degree, I think, in sports marketing or sports management, something around that realm. And one of her projects was to come up with like a tournament idea and for her class, but she ended up like saying, "Hey, I can actually do this." So she completely set it up, which I was so happy that she did it just because it was like such a great opportunity to showcase the women's game out west, because obviously there's not really any teams. And it was just a really fun experience. We got to go to the Vegas Golden Knights game. We walked on the strip. It was my first time going to Vegas, so it's a lot different from the Midwest, if I can say one thing about Vegas. So.
Yeah, I've never been there before, but it definitely looks like a very cool city. I've heard though you can only be there though for like 2 nights, and then it gets like overwhelming after a while.
Yeah, luckily we didn't stay on the strip. And I think that would have been crazy. I enjoy like the bustling like city, but at the same time, like there were so many people, and I've never been to New York City either. So like major cities, I really am not used to, and all the people. Like I think of the Mall America being like super packed with people, but
Yeah.
like a whole new level of like craziness. And I thought that since it was like Thanksgiving, and we went on Thanksgiving down to the strip, and I was like, oh, it'll be way quieter. No, it was crazy. And I also partly think that's maybe due to Black Friday shopping. And there's really nice stores on the strip. So yeah, I was a little surprised.
Oh yeah, I've been to New York before, and that's definitely a wake-up call for people in the Midwest, just because it's definitely a totally different kind of vibe,
Yeah,
like you were saying.
for sure.
Now, you're a senior this year, so I'm curious, what type of leadership do you want to bring to the team this year? Are you more of a vocal leader, lead by example? I know you have so many players that are actually older than you are, so it must be sort of weird to be a senior and not be have a much big leadership role, but it must be nice. Do you like ever try to give some of the freshmen and sophomores some advice on how to do certain things, or are you sort of just trying to lead by example on that aspect?
Yeah, like you mentioned, there's 9 players that are actually older than me, which is a bit bizarre considering if there were normal circumstances and COVID didn't happen, like I'd be the oldest on the team. So it is a weird kind of dynamic. We have great captains and they bring really great leadership qualities, but they also realize that there are a lot of older girls that have a lot of experience also. And I think our locker room does a good job of like making it known that like anybody can speak up and voice their opinions or during games if they see something on the ice that they want to share to the team. Like I'm not afraid to do that. I know many players on the team aren't afraid of doing that. I tend to try to lead by example, just not only in my play and at the rink, but also in school and in like volunteering and other things. Like I like to be a part of other things outside of the rink. So I'm on the executive team for our SAC, and I'm the Big Ten representative for that. So a lot of the younger girls come and ask, or even older girls come and ask me questions related to the athletic department and stuff like that. So yeah, I definitely think since I'm older, I do feel like I have the experience to take younger classmen under my wing and making sure that they feel included and valued and respected.
Now, what's like the biggest improvement you've made to your game this year when compared to your junior year? Obviously, you work on a lot of stuff during the off season, so I'm curious, as a senior, what are some of the big improvements you've noticed in your game so far this year?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things this season that I've really like focused on the off season is working on my shot as well as just like simple skills. Um, I I think like last year was a really great step for me, especially coming out of the COVID year. The COVID year was just crazy. We were getting tested 6 times a week. Like it wasn't normal. We couldn't go home. We had to wear masks everywhere, no fans. It was just a bizarre year. So it was really fun to see my game improve last year, and I think I'm building off of that this year. We have had a lot of injuries this first half, so that's forced me to have to step up and make sure that I'm performing at my highest level each night to help our team succeed. So yeah, I think just like I worked on my shot a lot this summer with Scott Bukestead. He's one of my shooting coaches, and I'm seeing that translate maybe not necessarily on the score sheet in terms of goals, but assists and creating chances for my team.
Now, what are your team's goals and expectations for the rest of the season?
Obviously, we have plenty of goals as a team, and that's to win a national championship first and foremost, to also win the Julianne By Cup and reclaim that and keep that at Ritter Arena, and then also to win the final face-off of the WCHA because we haven't done that in my career yet. So those three are definitely on the top of our list.
So let's transition now and talk about the beginning of your hockey career and kind of work all the way up to where you are today. So doing research on yourself, you're from Edina, Minnesota. So talk about growing up there and how'd you start playing hockey?
Yeah, so many listeners probably are like, oh, Edina. Like, it's a pretty well known hockey town within the state. Um, I'm very lucky to have grown up there. I actually only spent one season of my entire youth career in Edina because I did mostly, it's called Choice. It was a choice league so I played boys all the way through until I started and I played 1 year of U12s, my first year of U12A. And then we won state that year with Edina, which was really fun. There's a lot of girls on that team that have played college hockey, including Emily Oden on my team now. And we played against Gracie Ashtag in this state championship game when she played for Shakopee. So it's pretty funny to see all the players that I grew up playing against and with. And then my second year of U12s, I made the Blake varsity team in seventh grade. So I did grow up in Edina, but I only really spent one season playing for Edina.
Yeah, I don't understand the Edina hate. Now, I'm an East Coast person, so it's probably because I don't really get it because I've never been to Minnesota, but I was talking to someone from Edina on the podcast a few months ago, and I said I'm just gonna be an Edina fan because no one likes it, so I'll try to like hype them up a little bit.
Yeah, I didn't really like Edina too much in high school because they were our rivals. So in youth I liked Edina, but I can't say I like Edina very much anymore.
I just like the success. It's like because maybe it was because I grew up a Patriots fan, so you saw the winning all the time and people didn't like it. So I sort of respect that. So that's probably why it's my team, even though. Who was your favorite player growing up? Was it someone in the NHL or was it a women's player in the national team?
So I forgot to mention like how I got into hockey. So my family like has always played hockey. My mom actually played hockey. It wasn't my dad, and most people are like, "Oh, did your dad play growing up?" And I go, "No, my mom did." And she was the first head coach at St. Cloud State for their Division One program. My two of my aunts played at Minnesota. My uncle played at St. Cloud State under Herb Brooks, was the captain there. Um, my grandma and my grandpa still play hockey. So I've definitely been surrounded by hockey throughout my life. And honestly, didn't really have a choice to start playing hockey when I was 18 months old. And I finally like started really walking, like they put skates on me and I was off and going. So, my role models are definitely my aunts. I was really fortunate enough to grow up in that type of environment where I got to go watch my aunts play, as well as my mom, in like games. And I always, they did a WAM league after they ended college hockey, which is like Women's Hockey Association of Minnesota. I think that's what it stands for. And so they'd play games, and I'd be running the score clock or behind the bench running around the rink. And like being able to witness girls and women's hockey at such a young age and having those role models, I think really helped me and showed me that like I could play at that level as well and have aspirations and dreams. So my aunts definitely Winnie Broke Brown and Chelsea Broke Rosenthal, and then obviously my mom, Carrie Broke Wethington. So
That's really cool. I think a lot of players, women's players that I talk to, big reason why they got into hockey is because their dad or brother. So that's really cool to hear a women's hockey player get into hockey because of their mom. It's something that you don't hear too often.
exactly.
Now, before college hockey, you played for the Blake School. Talk about your experience there and how you got the opportunity to go to that school. I'm assuming it's like a private school in Minnesota.
Yeah, so it is a private school, and the funniest story is I didn't go there at all for hockey. I was going into middle school at Edina, and I wanted to get into an upper level math program since I'm a big nerd. If the people that know me are think I'm pretty nerdy, but so I went to math camp that summer at Blake. Um, my parents signed me up thinking it would be a good way to prepare me for the following school year. And I actually loved the math camp at Blake. And so I applied that summer and then got in and ended up going to Blake instead of Edina. And I had no idea about the hockey program. I didn't talk to the coaches. I was in sixth grade at the time. So it wasn't really on the forefront of my radar. And actually, that year they won state, and Danny Cameronese, who was a two-time Olympian, was on that team and won Miss Hockey that year. And so it's pretty funny to look back on that and think, oh wow, I actually like chose this school for like academic reasons only, and it ended up working out great for hockey too. So I definitely think things happen for a reason, and it's a little different from nowadays. I feel like I have two younger sisters, and high school hockey is a lot different where there's more recruiting now. Like people are going to schools for hockey in high school. And so it's funny to say that that was just not my reason at all. So.
Now, when you look back on your hockey experience there, like what's the best memory you have, whether it's on or off the ice?
Yeah, I played with some really great players. A lot of players ended up playing college hockey, which was such a great experience developmentally. But I'd have to say, probably we won three state championships. And I think one of the best ones was either my ninth or 10th grade year. My ninth grade year, we had like an insane team. We had a lot of players that ended up playing Division One. Um, and my eighth grade year, we lost in the state championship. So my ninth grade year, we were like, okay, we're getting the job done this time. And so winning it after that experience was really cool.
And talk a little bit about those players you got to play with, because doing research, you played with a lot of D1 commits, including Lily Delianides, Izzy Daniel, Addie Burton, and Grace Johnson, just to name a few. How does playing with those type of players help prepare you for college hockey?
Yeah, you just mentioned like four, and that's funny that you mentioned those because those are definitely my age group. But I also got to play with players like Carly Bullock, Sylvie Wallen, Carly Lawn, Jordan Chancellor. Um, I'm blank. I think that's like about Sarah McClanahan, Cece Wallen. Um,
Audrey Wethington.
well, my sister obviously. I was thinking of the older girls. Yeah, Grace Boyda. There's a ton that ended up like either they're committed to play college hockey and it didn't work out because of medical reasons, but yeah, all of them basically ended up playing college hockey. So it was really cool because it almost felt like we were like a prep for college team, if that makes sense. Like it was really fun to play with players that had those aspirations of playing at the next level. And I think that really helped developmentally to play with such great players. And I was really, really lucky as I look back and realize the development that I did get playing with those players and practicing each and every day with those girls.
Now, I want to ask you about something. It said in 2019 that you won the Miss Hockey Award in Minnesota. I'm curious what that is and what was it like winning that?
Yeah, so the Miss Hockey Award goes out to the best senior in the state of Minnesota, and it's usually based off of your entire high school career. And so winning that was really special because I'm on a list of really great players over the course of Minnesota high school hockey history, like many Olympians like Hannah Brandt, Chrissy Wendell, Danny Cameronese. Those are just to name a few that I can name off the top of my head. But it's cool also because the first winner was my aunt. And I think I was the 24th or 25th, but I got it the year that it was the 25th year of high school hockey for girls. And I found that to be really special just because it just showed how much the game has grown over such a short period of time. And it was really a really great honor for sure.
Yeah, Minnesota had a good run there because Grace Sumwinkle won it, then Taylor Heisey won it, then you won it like 3 straight years. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. And then it was a year off, and then Peyton Hemp, my teammate, won it as well.
Now, while doing research for this interview, I came across a video that I thought I should ask you about. It's called Zamboni Karaoke. We did it with some of your Blake teammates. I have to ask, do you remember doing that video, and do you try to watch it today, or is it something you avoid?
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, that was going in my senior year, and they did it with a few teams in high school hockey. So yeah, that was a fun experience. I had always like seen it done by other teams, so when we were asked, I was kind of looking forward to it. Riding a Zamboni is kind of cool too. I've never done that, so I got to check that off my list. But I honestly forgot about it until I was at a Wild game a few weeks ago because I'm partnering with the Wild this year for NIL, and I was at a game and my boyfriend was like mentioning the people on the Zamboni riding in between intermissions, and he's like, "Oh, that's kind of funny. I wonder how they like got on that." And I was like, "Oh, I've been on that Zamboni before." And so I actually like pulled it up and I like watched the first like 20 seconds of it and I was like, "Okay, like this is for another day," but it's pretty funny to look back on.
Yeah, when I asked Emily Oden about her experience doing it, she said she doesn't really enjoy watching that video anymore. So I was just curious if you had the same experience or not, just because she thinks it's too cringy sometimes.
Oh, it's for sure cringy, but it's funny. So I don't mind watching it.
Now, talk about the Minnesota high school hockey scene and what's it like being a player in that scene because I'm from the East Coast, so it's hard to understand because I find it cool that you can go to a public school and still get recruited to play Division One. Because here in the East Coast, that's basically impossible. You have to go to a prep school
Yeah.
somewhere or play juniors. So I thought, so talk a little bit about what it's like being a player in that scene and just how important it is for Minnesota.
Yeah, it's definitely unique and something that I've come to realize. I didn't really realize this until I played for USA Hockey and seen all the girls that had to go to prep school or leave their house to go to a different school for hockey, which is kind of bizarre to me considering they're like 14, 15, 16 years old, leaving their home at such a young age. And meanwhile, I'm like living at home, having my parents make me food and being able to play hockey and get the best experience, which I think was so beneficial for me. And for a lot of players, it's nice to have that experience of being a normal student as well as playing high school hockey. And it's so unique because there's most teams in the state have a lot of great players, which makes like most of the games pretty competitive. Obviously, you have teams that are better than others, but I would say the majority of teams that at least like Blake played, because we played a very tough schedule, like at least one player on each team that we played against was committed already to Division One. Which I just think is a great testament to the growth of the game, as well as just in the state of Minnesota, how much they value hockey and the importance of staying and playing for your high school. So yeah, it was a great experience. I wouldn't like do it any other way. I plan to have my kids stay in Minnesota and play high school hockey. I wouldn't probably send them off to a place to play because I just think it's so important to be home and experience that.
Now, talk about your recruitment process to the Gophers. What was that like for you, and what made Minnesota the school for you versus other ones you might have looked at?
Yeah, so I actually started my recruiting process in eighth grade, which is crazy to think about. Nowadays, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm like 14 years old. I shouldn't be having to like make these decisions, but um, I talked to schools for like 2 years. I was actually on the U18 team my ninth grade year. So I played in the World Championships and was uncommitted at that point. And I think that was a really great experience for me to like showcase myself and to know that I can play at the next level if I want to. And having that experience like made me want to like really pursue college hockey, as well as there was like 16 Minnesotans on that team that year, and I think like 12 of them were committed to Minnesota. And the head coach of that U18 team was at Minnesota at the time. So having those girls and being able to play for that coach kind of made me want to play there, as well as, of course, like my aunts and them playing at Minnesota made me dream of becoming a Gopher someday. And I would say a lot of Minnesotans, when they grow up, want to become a Gopher. So when I had that opportunity, when I was given the offer, I was like, I can't take this up. I get to be close to home. My parents get to come to every game, which if I was out east, they wouldn't be able to do that. So it's really nice to be home, close to home, but I still get a great education. I'm in the College of Biological Sciences studying cellular and organismal physiology. So I'm doing really, really well in school with where I'm at. I definitely looked at a lot of different places, but I couldn't give up the opportunity to play here and go to school here.
Now, I do want to ask, you get to play with your younger sister, Audrey, in Minnesota. How cool is it to sort of share your hockey experience with her, playing with her in high school and in college?
Yeah, it's been so much fun to play with my sister all throughout our youth and into college. It's going to be weird, I think, for both of us to not play with each other anymore at some point. Just because we've literally grown up together. We live together. We have a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment. We go to class. We have like several classes together usually each semester because we're in very similar majors. She's a bio major. She's in the same college as I am. So, and obviously we practice together. So we're we're around each other 24/7. Usually, if you see one of us, you see the other, as a lot of my teammates say. And it's just been such a great experience, and I wouldn't give it up for anything in the world.
Now, the big question with your team this season is you guys haven't won a game in the national tournament since 2019. I just want to ask, what's it going to take to get over that hump and win that game in the national tournament?
Yeah, you've got to first look at. I like that question, but I also have to say, like in 2020, we did make the NCAA tournament, but then COVID hit and we couldn't play. So that sucked. That was my freshman year. And then my sophomore year, there was a big controversy that we didn't make the tournament that year. That was the COVID year. And then last year was honestly like the first real experience for the majority of our team to play in the NCAA tournament. And we played against a really good Duluth team that has beaten us. Like we split with them both times during the regular season. So we were expecting a really tough game. And they played awesome that game. I mean, their goalie had like, I think 40 or 50 saves. We just couldn't score, unfortunately, and sometimes that's hockey, right? And then Duluth has also beaten like Wisconsin, Ohio State. So we knew that game would be definitely really tough. And I think for us, we gained a lot of experience and knowledge. Unfortunately, like, yeah, we would have loved to have won the national championship this year. I mean, last year, but I think having those experiences and within the national tournament will help us as we move forward.
The Frozen Four is in Minnesota this year, at least Duluth, so that's gotta be nice to know that like you could potentially win it on in your home state.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It's definitely been on the forefront of a lot of people's minds, including myself. And it would be really fun because I know a lot of fans would come up and watch, as well as like all of our families, because a lot of us are from Minnesota. So it'd be nice. It's just driving up 2 hours off of 35. So yeah.
Now we're now in the non-hockey segment. First question is, what music do you like to listen to?
I'm a big country music fan, so I love like Morgan Wallen, Zach Bryan, Kenny Chesney, Luke Bryan. So yeah, a lot of country music.
Yeah, I'm mostly into everything, but one th music I never really listened to before a few years ago was country music. But I worked for a baseball team like a couple summers ago, and a lot of them are from like down south in the Midwest, and I guess country music's like super popular there.
Yeah,
And like that's sort of how I got into it. I'm definitely a big Morgan Wallen fan. He's probably my favorite country artist.
yeah, he's awesome. I actually got tickets for him. He's not performing in Minnesota, but I did get on the pass list for San Diego. But I was like, oh, I don't know if I can like commit to it right away. So I passed up on the tickets because I wasn't sure if I would be able to make it in July, unfortunately. But definitely want to go see him. And then I also forgot to mention I'm a big Luke Combs fan too.
Oh, nice. What is your most embarrassing hockey moment?
Um, that's a hard one. I would say one embarrassing moment in college hockey was during the national tournament this last year. We were playing at Ritter, and um, the benches are like next to each other, but there's a space in between the benches where like the photographers stand to take photos. And I went out there thinking that I was supposed to go out there, and then one of my players ended up essentially she was trying to change, and then she was like, oh crap, I can't change. So then she kind of went back out there. So then I had to hop off quick, right? Before we got too many men. And so I actually hopped into the photo portion of the benches rather than our team's benches, and they didn't give me a penalty for it. So that was kind of nice, but I'd never seen that before. So that was the first time I've done that, and I've never ever seen it done again. So
That's pretty funny. The photographer's probably more curious about it than anyone else.
yeah, I think the photographer was a little surprised when I jumped in the box.
Now, speaking of your teammates, who's the funniest on the team?
Hmm, that's hard. There's a lot of like funny people on our team for different reasons. I would just say a few people that come off the top of my head are Kirsten Hengler and Abby Murphy.
Now, which teammate is the worst at responding to your text?
Oof. Hmm. I think Emma Connors is notorious for like being bad with texting. So the best way to get a hold of her is either like calling her or Snapchatting her.
Now, obviously, your team might have some of the best style in women's college hockey. But in your opinion, who has the best style on the team? It's a really hard choice though, because I've seen some of those pregame outfits that you guys pull up with.
Yeah, I know. I'm like getting already ready for Friday for my pregame outfit. So, and Christmas happened, so I got some more items to add um to my list of things to wear. But that's hard because a lot of people have very different styles. But I would say either Olivia King or Emily Oden. I wouldn't be able to I wouldn't necessarily wear ever what they're wearing because I just don't I wouldn't ever think that it would look good on me, but they make it look good, so I'll give it to them.
Now, last non-hockey question is, what is the most interesting thing you've seen or read this week?
Um I've been this might sound really weird, but I've been really into like reading about the Idaho murder case just because it's like college students and I feel I lived in the hockey house for a few years. So being in a house full of girls, it felt really eerie to me. So I've been because the suspect has been caught. I've been reading a little bit more about that whole situation. So that would be the most interesting thing, sadly. But yeah,
Yeah, I I think they're definitely gonna have to make a Netflix documentary on that in a few years. I
yeah.
just think that's bound to happen.
Oh my gosh, I know it's crazy. Like I was scrolling through TikTok and people when the suspect's like picture came out, they are already listing off like potential actors to play him. Like serious, I'm like, oh my gosh, this case hasn't even like started and we're already trying to figure out a Netflix documentary about it. But yeah, I definitely think there will be one.
Yeah, I think mine's kind of a sad one too. It's what happened with the Buffalo Bills player.
Yeah,
Just because like that injury's so rare, but I guess like if you get impact on your chest like the wrong moment, like it could ha give you cardiac arrest. And I was sort of just interested to see like how that work happens. And I
yeah.
saw that happen to Chris Pronger like a few years ago, and he
Oh
like
yeah.
survived and made a full recovery. So I'm hoping the same thing for that Bills player.
I know that was another one that I was going to mention, but I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so depressing by reading all that stuff. But yeah, that was really sad. I was watching the game, and so when that happened, I was like, oh my goodness. Because that's I mean, so rare. Um, and I think it was really hard to see the players reacting to their fellow teammate too.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I can only imagine if that happened to one of my teammates, how I would do in that situation. So I guess the one positive thing I guess to take away from it was the Sabres, they won yesterday and Tage Thompson scored like 30 goals. They scored in the third minute of overtime. It was kind of a weird coincidence, I guess, that how it all happened, but I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it is weird how those things happen. I had one of those kind of experiences. My great grandma passed away at age 100, and we had her funeral. And then that night we played a huge game, rivalry game against Edina, and I got my 100th point that game. And
Yeah,
I didn't even know it until afterwards. But it felt kind of like my great grandma was like watching over. So.
that's awesome. Well, getting back to some hockey questions now, I guess the last one I want to ask is for all the younger people that are listening to this, what advice would you give them on what it takes to make it to the Division 1 level where you are today?
Yeah, I just think it starts with having fun. If you love the game, that's going to make it way easier for you. It's also important to be a really good teammate, treat your coaches with respect, and as well as your teammates, make sure that they feel valued and important because each role on every team is important. And so I think those are the two biggest things. And then it all starts with hard work. Like if you really want it, you'll do everything you possibly can to get to that next level. So those are my three pieces of advice: be a good teammate, have fun, and work hard.
And what should be done to help grow women's hockey?
Yeah, I just think like continuing to have exposure, like what you're doing, Matthew, with having women's hockey players on your podcast. I think I'm a big believer in if you can see it, you can be it. And like I've mentioned before, like having women's hockey, being exposed to it at such a young age, like it made me see that I can be it. So, continuing to have college games, women's college games on TV, I think it was a great step to have it on ESPN, the past few years for NCAA tournament. And also, of course, having the Olympics, it's like I think they had like the most viewership of any of the sports at the Olympics this past year, and it just showcases the growth of the game. And I think the more we can expose it through media and social media coverage, will be great.
Yeah, I read somewhere the gold medal game had like more viewers than the highest rated like NHL regular season game or something like that. It was pretty cool to see.
Yeah, exactly. And it just shows you that like there is like possibility for growth of the women's game and people are interested in watching it. Um,
Hmm.
and that's the biggest thing.
Well, before we let you go, do you have any shout outs you want to give to your teammates, former teammates, family members, friends, or if there's something you want to say, the floor is all yours.
Yeah, I just want to give a shout out to my family, as well as all my teammates. I'm very fortunate to have all of them in my life. And I'm looking forward to the second half of the season. And I appreciate you, Matthew, for having me on the show.
Well, thank you so much, Madeline, for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate your time. It means a lot to myself, and I can't wait to see your team play in the second half. I know it's going to be a lot of fun to watch, and I'm wishing you and your team nothing but success for the rest of the season. It should be fun to watch.
Thank you so much.